Okay, so screening and testing. Again, another sort of module that often gets pushed to the side because people are like, it's not really as exciting as strength and power or velocity training or stuff like that. But again, very important to understand, get context and make sure that we emphasize it enough without going down the rabbit hole of the intricacies of what testing and screening can be and how much it can start to take time away from what's actually important. Within this module, we'll go through a little bit of the system that I follow, but ultimately it really depends on the sport. So I can't give you answers to exactly what tests to do, but I can give you obviously options and ideas. But then also there's a big chunk of how we actually present our testing data. Because again, that's quite a powerful way that we can get athletes on board and coaches. So there is a series of just slide after slide of different random ways of looking at data. So it's a good way for you guys to get an idea of how you can actually present it to coaches and athletes. And again, I'm a massive believer, if you haven't noticed yet, is on selling this within presentations. When I present this data to athletes, and obviously it goes to the coaches as well, but they're in the room, that it'll come up on a slide, I talk through it, I make sure that athletes have an understanding of what they're looking at. Because the only way they buy into doing it and me getting the best results from it is they understand why they're doing it and obviously what it looks like and how to interpret it and what it means to them, okay? So again, if you don't already, get good at presenting to athletes because it's your best way and best thing to do. So, little pyramid that I like to reference to start off is this sort of screening into performance testing. So screening is that foundational thing. It sits at the bottom. Screening is designed to be quick. It's designed to give you big answers very quickly. It is not designed to find every single answer possible, okay? The FMS is often shit-canned a bit because it misses this or it doesn't do this. You're right, it's not designed to do everything. The same as any other screen. You're never gonna have a screen that finds everything. That's not meant to. You're meant to have a screen that is easily implemented, typically in large groups, that's why they're created. Can we find some big rocks in a short amount of time? Okay? This will be referenced in regards to a new club you're working with where you want to get your head around a big playing group. You may have a lot of junior teams you need to get some data on, easy way to do it. It may be your daily screening with a group and a team where you know you don't have the opportunity to do 15 tests every day with them. What key things are you going to do that you can just have a screen that's going to identify big rocks? The biggest thing you can do with screens is actually knowing what they don't show. Doesn't mean you don't use them, but if you know what they're not going to show you, you know what you can account for and need to possibly delve a little bit deeper in for. The next layer is assessments. This is that sort of detective type setup. The more assessments you know, the better. Physio's phenomenal at it. They've got 1 million of them. They can assess your ankle in 16 different ways. S&C coaches, not so much. So go forward and back, great, we'll keep moving. So it's important, even as an S&C coach, and this is where, as a physio, the top of the pyramid is something you guys need to get better at with the performance and what it's telling you. As an example, physios love doing these hop and stick options. 3 hop and stick for power. Tell you right now, if you need to land the third one, that's not power. You're not doing max power. That's just a little iteration, but that's where physios need to get better at that side. And then S&Cs need to actually not just have the cop out that, physios do all the assessments. There's plenty of general assessments that we can do as S&Cs that are not hands-on that get you a really good understanding of where an athlete might be quickly, okay? So the top is that performance testing. Understanding that icing on the cake and how it's actually helping us and what it's doing. So if we kick off with the screening side of it, I've sort of spoken about the purpose and the fact there is a number. There's FMS, there's the AAA, ASCM, have a screen. The other great one is your first year out of school, undergrad S&C, goes, I tried the FMS, but I didn't like it, so I changed it, I added this, and this. Well, you're not doing the FMS anymore, so obviously it's not going to be telling you much, and you're now using assessments that actually are doubling up with screen options that the FMS already does because you don't really understand what you're assessing because you're the first year out of undergrad. So if you're going to commit to something, I always say, just start. If it's the FMS, just start with it. Do it, see what you get. As you start to identify holes, and legitimate holes for your context, your group, then 100% you can modify into a more unique screen. Every sporting association will typically have their own screen. Rugby Australia has their screen. Soccer Federation has a screen. So as physios and S&Cs, you move across different sports, you'll start to be identified with different screening. All of them are as good and as bad as each other to an extent. To an extent. And this is the saying that I mentioned before, but it's appropriate to a hell of a lot of stuff we talk about. All models are wrong, but some are useful. So when people, social media, everyone's arguing about what's wrong with something, maybe have a look at, what's right about it? Why would I use it and how does it work? Because I can guarantee you, everything that's ever been said to be wrong, I've probably used at some time, at some stage, and have got some value out of it. The reason things get popular, the reason things are old school, or the reason things are in existence is typically because someone somewhere has got a result from it somehow. Doesn't mean everything is appropriate, but it certainly means that there are a lot of things out there that may be contextually appropriate for you, and you can start to get a lot out of it. And again, we spoke about large groups, initial flagging. We'll delve in a little bit more, but in a team environment, having a screen for readiness before they train, on a daily when they're coming in for physio treatment in the mornings or anything like that. Again, what we just talked about for the gym, that's going to be a screen. That's a form of screening. What big rock questions can you ask to get the best information out of them in a short amount of time for a lot of people? That's as simple as what we're doing. So looking for opportunities where you can use screenings to identify big rocks. Assessments allow you to be a detective. Knowing a large range is a must. Now, from a physio standpoint, it's a graduation must. We've kind of already ticked that off. As an S&C, we could easily get away with not knowing a lot. I'm not saying we need to know 16 options for an ankle, but knowing some really good ones is really valuable across the body. Also really valuable if you're working with a physio, understanding what they value and understanding what a Thomas test means. Again, it sounds simple, but when a physio works with an S&C and they say something like, at the moment they're pretty tight on a Thomas test, or needle wall is at 5 centimetres. Just simply understanding what that means is a powerful relationship builder. And I think a lot of S&Cs, and so they should double down in S&C, that's what they do. But in a team environment, you're going to be working with a number of different people, and understanding their language and how to work in is really powerful to build that. Even if you're in a private setting, you will be working with people in a physio context down the road that have referred you people. When you're on the phone and they're telling you all their screening, everything they've done, you don't have to understand 100%, but if you're not understanding 90% of it, then you probably need to take a look at your upskilling around that early stage rehab/assessment knowledge, okay? Adapting specific assessments to create a screen. Because ultimately, the better you get at assessments, the better you're going to have, the better ability you're going to have to create screens in unique environments. I'll reference again. The more knowledge you have about it, the more things you've used before, you can then compile a really effective screen. You don't need to use an FMS. You can create whatever screen you need that's going to identify the big rocks for that sport. I can tell you right now, ice hockey screening is going to be different to rugby league screening. Very different outcomes, usually very different injury profiles. So, I just nicknamed it my influential 6. These are the ones that across all sports I've worked with, they seem to just keep coming back. They tend to be used a lot by physios, S&Cs. They tend to be big rocks to tell you. So if you're sitting there going, fuck, I don't know any assessments, well, here's 6 of them that you can steal straight away and use. But you're probably already using a lot of them. 1, the famous needle wall. This is a very basic one. Typically, we use this a lot the morning of trainings. Understanding a change in needle wall will influence gait. Simple as that. If something influences gait, then you probably want to have a bit of attention to it, okay? Understanding what someone's normal needle wall is, and then seeing what loading patterns and what drills that you've influenced or implemented shift their needle wall is very powerful to know. Trendelenburg test. I like this in general assessments for athletes. And for those that don't know Trendelenburg, it's simply like a stalk test standing up. If you start to see this Trendelenburg action coming through, This for me is the most athletic action you can possibly do. That. An athlete that is strong in that position will translate across a lot of positions very well. High velocity, change of direction, even good tackle mechanics is very powerful when we have a very good Trendelenburg position or anti-Trendelenburg position. Also known in the speed world as that hip hike, positive hip position. It's been named a few things. But understanding if someone can simply stand like this versus that is a very easy assessment when you first meet them and a nice screen to add in. Thomas test, this is often used in our daily. This is our pulling the knee close to the chest, lying back onto a plinth, having that leg drop off the edge so we can now see the angle at which that knee comes to the chest and the angle at which that hip flexor goes down. We use that as basically a pass or fail in our screening. If it's above parallel, it's a fail. If it's below parallel or parallel, it's a pass for most of our athletes. And again, we know that this change is going to cause a shift in their mechanics in warm-up. And it's not saying, oh, you're not training because your knee to wall was terrible and your Thomas test was no good. It just means, guess what, in our prep, we're adding more of this, we're adding more of that, or if that's not changing it, we may need to double down on some physio work. So knowing these will influence what we do. Toe touch. Asking an athlete to bend over and touch their toes is quite an appropriate test. Understanding that type of range, it does carry over to other ones like sit and reach. We do use left and right sit and reach. Again, doesn't mean it's this game breaker that it's going to answer all these questions that you have.